So what we're going to do actually in this video is that we're going to practice what we did on the last video. Remember, on the last video we proved this of course the four compound angle identities. So I just thought that it would be a better of course for me to separate them, so that I didn't want to make it a long video. I wouldn't want you to to get bored while you are watching that. So I just separated it so that it can become a little bit short in this case. So these are the four compound angle identities that you get in grade 12. Of course they do come in exams, so I would say get it's better for you to to be friends with them, so that you don't battle when you are in the exam. So we're going to do two questions just to practice this idea of the compound angle identities. But also in the next video that we're going to produce, we're also gonna look of course on the compound angle identities, of course the other more questions, of course, to embed this idea of the compound angle identities. So they say we must simplify each of the following using an appropriate identity. Now they say we must simplify sine of 70 multiplied by cos of 10 minus cos of 70 multiplied by sine of 10. And already something that I need you to note is that for the cos identities, compound angle identities, their names in this case they do match. So it's cos, sine, sine. But as for the sine identity, their names in this case they do not match. So it's sine, cos, sine. So their names do not match. So in this case, they say we must simplify sine of 70 multiplied by cos of 10 minus cos of 70 multiplied by sine of 10. Of course, you can see that the names do not match. So this tells us that this, in actual fact, is the sine identity. But which one is the one that has a negative, a minus rather? So it would be the fourth one. So in this case, but what does it say? It says sine, we sine, of course, this first angle, and we subtract the second. So this would be sine of 70 minus, of course, 10 degrees. So it says you sine the first angle minus the second. So this would be of course the first angle. This would be the second angle. So that so in case to simplify that of course even further, you would have this as sine of course of 60 degrees, and we know that sine of 60, that's of course root 3 over a 2. So that's how you would actually simplify that. So let's just look at the next one. So they say of course we are still simplifying. So let me just bring that closer. So they say we must simplify of course cos of 4a multiplied by cos of a. Now you see the names, of course, in this case they match. So when the names match, so this tells us of course this in actual fact this is a cos identity, but which one in this case? Of course you can see if I were to bring that back, so we can see that's actually the cos identity, but which one? It says minus, right? So in this case it would be that second one in this case. But you remember, if it is a minus on this side, so on this side it would be a positive. So you cos the first angle plus the second. So in this case, if we simplify that, it would be, so this would be equals to cos, of course, of the first angle, which is 4a, plus of course a. Now remember it says plus, right? So in this case, if we simplify that, of course it will become cos of 5a. Now again, we don't know what a is, so we can't simplify that any further. So that would be the simplified version of that. Now they say of course we must again simplify sine of 35 multiplied by cos of 55. You can see the names do not match. So in this case, so this tells us that a sine identity again. So again, which one? The one that has a positive. Now remember, one thing I want you to note about the compound angle identities for cos, if it's a minus there, of course on the other side it would be a plus. But if it's of course if it is a plus there, or on the other side would be of course a negative. So that's one thing that I want you to note very carefully. And also, of course, I don't know why I'm saying that, because it's actually given on your formula sheet. So you can always, just refer there. And of course, you can always go to your formula sheet and check so that, we don't make mistakes. So they say we must simplify that. We can see that's actually a sign identity. Why? Because the names do not match, right? So with the sign identity, here's a good thing. If it's a plus there, even on the other side, it's gonna be a plus. If it's a minus, it's also a minus. So it's only the cos identity in this case that changes. So of course for this one it would become, so this would be equals to sine. Of course it says the first angle, which is 35 degrees plus 55 degrees. So in this case, of course, this would be the first. Again, that would be the second. And we know that sine of course 35 plus of course 55 would get a 90. And we know that sine of 90, of course, that gives us a 1. So that would be the answer, the simplified version, of course, of all of that. Now they say prove the following identity. Now they say we must of course prove that sine of 180 plus a, that gives us of course negative sine of a. Now of course I'm sure some of you are saying, what? Of course we know that's true, of course, because we can use the the cast diagram. Now remember, on our cast diagram, all of them on the first quadrant they are positive, and on the second, of course, only sine is positive, and then on the third it's only tan, of course. On the fourth it's only of course cos, that's positive. So we know that on the first it's it's actually 90 minus theta, and on this one it is 180 minus of course theta. So in this case there it would be 180 plus theta, and there on the fourth one it would be 360 minus a theta. Of course there are other versions. Of course this one would be actually this one is only one, it's only 90 minus. This one you can write it as 90 plus, because in this case when you're going on that side from, of course we know that this would be 90, so that would be 90 plus. So but again they say we must prove that we know that sine there is negative, only tan is positive there, right? So in this case, so they say we must prove, that's what you need to note. So when we are proving that the other side is equals to the other side, we only take one side and try to simplify it so that it matches the other side in this case. So we are trying to prove that this side is equals to that. Of course that one is already simplified, so we're going to take the left hand side. Of course we are trying to simplify so that it looks exactly as that. Now that's one thing you need to note. It's not an equation, but rather they are saying you must prove that it is true, that these two are equal. So what do we have? We have sine of 180 degrees plus a, right? Now you might be asking, how are we going to be able to do that? Now remember, we have just learned this idea of compound angle identities. So this is actually a compound angle, right? So of course of sine. So in this case we'll just use the identity for sine to simplify that, or to expand it, if I may put it in that way. So in this case, if I were to expand that, so this would be of course sine of the first angle, which is 180, multiplied by cos of the second, which is of course a, that says plus, of course this would be cos for 180, multiplied by, of course, that would be sine of a. And in this case we know that of course we know that sine of 180, that equals to 0. So all of this expression here will collapse, because that's equals to 0. So we'll only be left with that, and we know that 1/8 cos of 180, that of course would give us a -1. So this would actually in fact be a -1 multiplied by sine of a. And of course when you multiply those two, you'd get negative sine of a. So in this case, we have shown that of course indeed the left hand side is equals to the right hand side. So in this case, we can conclude, say the left hand side is indeed equals to the right hand side. So that's QED. To some of you, that's quite easily done in this case. So that would be, of course, when we simplify that. Now on our next session, we are going to to do more examples in this case. Of course, I would say if you haven't subscribed, please do so, and also hit that notification bell so that you don't miss the lessons that we will post in the future. Now if of course this video helped you at some extent, always like, and if you have got any more questions, if you have got of course more questions, you can always throw them in the comment section. I'm always reading the comments. So if you need me to do more examples, you can always say, and I will do that immediately, because my goal is that you pass very well, more than of course more than the way I did. So this is me saying goodbye until we meet next time.